Hi friends! My book today is called A Bad Case of the Stripes, and it's written by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 different outfits, but none of them seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress, and she looked in the mirror, and she screamed! Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. Oh, my heavens! You've completely covered with the stripes! This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. Do you feel all right? I feel fine, Camilla answered. But just look at me. You get back in bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with all of those stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to visit and examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, running nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camilla told him. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she can't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me, and off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla, and they called her Camilla Crayon, or Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything was normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought it was great. One yelled out, let's get some purple polka dots. Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone shouted checkerboard, and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on the TV. Oh. Do you think she's happy or sad about that? How do you think that makes her feel? That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Miss Cream. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction. And I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed she couldn't believe 2 days ago everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Miss Cream phoned him the next day. I think I better bring in the specialist, and we will be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Group, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed and taped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, said Dr. Group. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chicken pox, said Dr. Cricket. Or a sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist, and they each handed her a bottle filled with colored pills. Take one of each before you go to bed, said Dr. Group. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh, goodness. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Miss Cream called. But this time, instead of specialists, he brought in experts. Dr. Gourd and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked, prodded, looked at, and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, and they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gourd finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. "Or possibly some form of bacteria," said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Or could it be fungus?" said Dr. Gourd instantly, and Camilla was covered in different color fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla and looked at each other. "We need to go over these numbers again and get back to the lab," said Dr. Gourd. "We'll call you when we know something," but the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. By now, TV news had found out all about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of an incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Oh my goodness, look at all those people. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies, from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was so hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail. But nothing worked. Look at poor Camilla. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said, "and breathe deeply and become one with your room." "I wish you hadn't said that," groaned Camilla. Slowly, she started to melt into her walls in her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was her dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we gonna do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse," and she began to cry. Do you see Camilla? Her mouth, her nose, her eyes? Oh my goodness. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock on the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me, but I think I can help you." Let's see if she can help. She went into Camilla's room, looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "We have here is a bad case of the stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." And she pulled out a small green bean from her bag. "Here, this might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Miss Cream. "Oh, no," replied the old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans." Camilla? "Oh, these are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you would like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plate full of lima beans, more than anything, but she just was so afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," the old woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." And she put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good right now. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she had gone through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait! The truth is I love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, the feathers, and the squiggly tails began to disappear. The whole worm swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head, and she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had a case of the stripes again. The end.